Good afternoon. We're going to get the April 14th, 2026 Legislative Council meeting called to order. And we will start with roll call.
Senator Harrington. Senator Stewart. Senator Stewart's not here at the moment. Senator Duson. Senator Pearce.
Here.
Representative Smith. Representative Falkingham. Representative Gramlich. Representative Moonen.
Here.
President Daughtry.
Present.
Speaker Fecto.
Present.
Mr. Speaker, you have a quorum.
Thank you. We're going to move a few items around the agenda, but first, summary of the January 2022-2026 meeting of the Legislative Council. These are the meeting minutes. I will seek a motion to adopt. Motion by Senator Duson. Is there a second? Second by Representative Moonen. All those in favor by showing your hands. Unanimous of those present. Reports from staff office directors, we have none. Reports from council committees, we have none. Old business, item number 1, council actions taken by ballot, no action required. This is information only. And then I'm going to take item number 2, provision to legislators of personal information protection services, out of order, and let Director Gresser give us an update on what this is.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So the National Conference of State Legislatures established the NCSL Legislator Security Fund, which is intended to help state legislatures address rising threats.
Mr. Gresser, thank you. We're gonna get the door shut because it's very difficult to hear.
Okay.
Okay.
Better?
Yes, please. Thank
Okay.
you.
NCSL established the Legislator Security Fund intended to help legislatures address rising threats to legislators' personal safety. NCSL has invited each state to apply for a grant. They've informed the state of Maine that we're eligible for a grant in the amount of $37,200. To receive a grant, each applicant must ensure that the program supported by the funds is made available on a nonpartisan basis to all members. An eligible use of grant funds is the payment of subscription fees for identity personal information protection services. I attended one of NCSL's information sessions, and they confirmed that if a state contracts with one of these organizations and makes it available to all the members, that is an eligible project to qualify for using the grant funds. There are rolling application deadlines. The next deadline is April 30th. The Personal Information Protection Service. This is the type of service that all of our personal information may be exposed online more than we know or wish. These data removal services can help minimize the amount of personal information that is available. The services provide investigation, data discovery, removal, suppression, ongoing monitoring, and then regular reporting to each person who is signed up for this, so that they report on what they found and what they removed, which is helpful for people who are interested in mitigating their ongoing exposure. So I gathered information regarding the provision of the services, and it appears that if we receive this grant from NCSL, it could cover a substantial portion of the costs depending on the plan chosen. And because this year we are projecting savings from lower than expected travel related costs, we could use those funds to make up the difference.
Thank you, Director Gresser. This was an action. Subscribing all members to Delete Me was an action that the Minnesota legislature took in the aftermath of the assassination of Speaker Hortman and her husband, as well as the attempted assassination on the state senator and his wife. And it sounds like this is a good opportunity to leverage some NCSL grant funding and see if this is something that people appreciate and that it works. And so I would propose that we accept the NCSL grant funding, allocate the additional funding necessary that would allow us to offer this to all members, assuming that all members enroll, which I don't think all members will enroll. So I suspect we'll end up seeing cost savings roll back into legislative council funds, but I think we need to prepare for all members enrolling. And I would propose this as a pilot. And if after this council is finished and members have experience with it, I think the next council should make a decision about whether or not they want to continue to pay for this service. So that would be my proposal. And for clarity, members who are terming out or not returning, they could enroll in the immediate, but they would not remain enrolled once their service is completed. Is that correct?
That is correct. The seats are transferable. This particular organization, this company, as you mentioned, provides services to other legislatures, and they're aware of the notion of elections and terms and things like that. So we specifically asked them what would happen, and those seats are transferable to the new members.
Great. Any additional questions for Director Gresser? Representative Smith.
So do we have a cost analysis on what we would need to put in after the money from them?
Yes, if we were to subscribe for the full legislature, not for trash. You're right. If we were to subscribe for the entire legislature, the amount that we would need would be $56,000.
Any additional questions? Representative Falkingham?
Do we need a motion to move this?
Yep.
Move this.
Yeah,
funding
there's
in?
been no motion yet.
And there's been no motion
No.
made yet. Well, I think we all here on both sides of the aisle know that there's been a lot more level of stalking and harassment happening. People becoming more aware of legislators' home addresses. It can be unsettling, you know. I've personally been the victim of plenty of it, I'll say. But I'm not personally scared, but I can totally understand how someone could be and would want this sense of security. I think it's very common sense, and I think this is definitely something that we should do. And I would like to move this in.
Second.
Motion and a second. Motion by Representative Falkingham, seconded by President Daughtry. Representative Falkingham, was your motion with the understanding that this would be a one-year pilot, and the next legislative council would reconsider whether or not it continues?
Sure, let's do that. and
Okay, thank you.
Revisit it.
Okay, so the motion is to accept the funds from NCSL, allocate the funds required for our portion, and make it a pilot until the next legislature convenes. Any discussion on the motion? Senator Harrington.
I mean, I think it's a great concept to allocate funds for this, but when we have situations of, the assistant clerk of the House doxing addresses of legislators with no consequence, seems to me that it's a little hypocritical that we're going to delete our information from the internet, but not actually hold members of this building accountable when they dox legislators where they sleep at night. And I would just throw that out there for conversation because once again, there's been no accountability for that member of the legislature.
Any other discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor, show of hands. It's unanimous of those present. Thank you. Okay, we will now go through the study table. Director Fox, do you want to provide us an overview of what's before us? And then I think what we'll do is, I know sometimes we belabor the point around some of these items around non-conforming, so on and so forth. I think it'd probably be best to what I'm going to propose is we take an initial straw vote on whether or not there's interest in moving it forward. And if there's not, we can proceed to the next. And if there is, then we can go through the aspects of non-conforming and then take a vote on what may need to be amended. Does that work? Okay, I'll turn it over to you just to start us off with an overview of what's before us.
Sure, and Suzanne has just reminded me that you need to adopt the policy for accepting study proposals. I believe that is in your packet.
Yep, it's got a little Post-it note on
Yes,
it.
that's right.
Salmon colored.
Yes.
Let's seek a motion to adopt. This is the standard requirements that we typically follow for. Thank you. Senator Peirce moves this item be
Sorry.
adopted, seconded by President Daughtry. All those in favor? Unanimous of those present. Thank you. Okay.
And then I just thought I'd give you an orientation of the materials that I provided without going into too much detail. You should have two charts, so spreadsheets. One is for studies that have been, legislation that's been considered this session. And then the second chart is one that is studies that were carried over either on the special study table. There's one that was carried over on the appropriations table. So we've divided them that way because it was a long list otherwise. And the materials or the engrossed versions of that legislation are essentially in order of those two charts, starting with the most recently adopted, so those from this session. I've also provided a summary memo to you that points out certain things that I think are important for your consideration, or you'll hear me or see me raise my hand about as you're moving through, which is if the, for example, if the legislation includes other statutory provisions aside from the study, and what you might need to do if you either choose to approve that study or not approve that study. I do give you the overall number that proposed legislative council staffing versus other types of staffing. There's a provision in there about budget resources and then other considerations that you need to make. I'll be flagging those for you if you decide that that's one that you want to move on with. So I don't need to go over the memo, but it's here for your reference.
Great. Thank you, Director Fox. We'll start with the page that has at the very bottom 1 of 5, which I believe are the bills that have been considered this year, if that's correct. We'll start with these. Before we get started on these, for those who are watching and listening, there is a limit to how many of these we can do. There's only so many staff resources, so that is something that those of us who are going to be taking votes have had to take into consideration. And for me personally, I'm also thinking about how we are about to embark on a transition of the executive branch. A lot of these studies require the cooperation and follow through of the executive branch. There are some really good studies, some really good proposals that are on these lists that I will not be supporting based on the fact that if they were proposed at a time where we did not have a administration that would be leaving office and a new one coming in would make sense to me. But given the circumstances, some of these just don't make sense to me, given that we are about to see a transition in the administration. So with that, I think we can get started with the very first proposal on this list, which is LD 2244, Real Estate Property Tax Relief Task Force, which was authorized once before and is seeking to be reauthorized for 6 meetings, I believe.
Last year you approved this and it was a 2-year study. This just specifies that in the second year of the study, they have up to 8 meetings.
Okay, 8 meetings, thank you. I will seek, well, the motion will be presumed in, and we will vote on that motion as presumed. And I'll take we'll vote on this by a show of hands since there's so few of us here. All those in favor of moving this in? That is unanimous of those present. And are there any issues that we need to address with this one?
This wouldn't really count towards your overall number that use OPLA or other legislative council staff resources because we've already begun the study last year. So I'm not sort of factoring that into the overall resource count because we've already assigned staff.
Okay, otherwise the structure of it and everything else is fine. Great. The next item is LD 374, commission to make recommendations for equity in the compensation of prosecutors and public defenders in the state. The motion is presumed in. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion fails 2-4. Sorry, motion is 3-3.
Don't feel strongly either, but
LD 838, commission to study options for public financing of transmission and distribution infrastructure generation projects and energy storage projects. Motion is presumed in. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion fails 3-3.
Speaker Facto. One that LD that has been added because it was something that was late. A late addition was LD 395. That
Yeah,
should be-
I do have that on my list
Oh, I'm
here.
sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Apologies.
Oh, they're in numerical order. Yeah, sorry. I put that at the very end, so we'll get to that one. Thank you. LD 847, commission to improve tenant landlord relationships and increase the use of housing vouchers. The motion is presumed in. All those in favor? And all those opposed? Motion fails 3-3. LD 877, commission to study the employment practices and operations of transportation network companies operating in the state. The motion is presumed in. All those in favor? All those opposed? Senator Dewson, opposed or supportive? Okay, motion fails 3-3. LD 1416, commission to study the placement of certain individuals committed to the custody of the Commissioner of Health and Human Services for observation upon a finding of incompetence to stand trial. Motion is presumed in. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion fails 0-6. Commission to review the State Board of Optometry. This bill is in the dead files. And similarly with the next item, Committee Amendment B, also LD 1803 is in the dead files. LD 1921, Commission to study sorry. I haven't done 1921 yet.
oh yeah, I see those on that.
1803 is in the dead files.
Maybe it came off your list already.
I'm working off probably an older list, so that's fine.
So.
I just want to
Understood.
Yeah.
We're not on the same material.
Okay, if I miss any items, we'll catch them at the end. LD 1921, commission to study pathways to increase efficiency in resolving legal disputes involving housing development projects. Motion is presumed in. All those in favor? All those opposed? 3-3, the motion fails. LD 1941, commission to examine the intersection of parole and current sentencing practices. Motion is presumed in. All those in favor? All those motion carries 6-0. LD 1893, Advisory Committee to the Child Advocate. And this one's a little interesting because it's,
We're on print out from the ones that are in their binders.
Okay.
Say the LD again.
It's on the very last page of the first chart that you have. So you're right, Speaker Fecto, this is slightly different. So most of this bill is statutory language establishing the Office of the Child Advocate. And it includes within that legislation an ongoing advisory council that does have 2 legislative members, but otherwise does not involve things that are related to like the legislative study budget or legislative staff resources. And it is not currently on the study table.
so essentially we are funding it on the general fund appropriation was conducted through the appropriations committee last evening. This bill is still bouncing between the bodies. We are just authorizing the council to exist essentially.
Really, the only thing that is pertinent to the study table is that there are 2 legislators who
Right.
will be appointed to this ongoing statutory commission. Otherwise, it doesn't really involve legislative study, budget resources, or legislative council staff.
Okay, perfect. With that, the motion is presumed to move this forward. So the appropriation is irrelevant to us as well. Yeah. Okay, all those in favor? It's unanimous, 6-0. LD 2121. Working groups to study methods for enhancing the safety of judicial and elected officials. The motion is presumed in. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion fails 1-5. Okay, so LD 395. So what's the posture of this is it had an emergency enactor, it failed. Did you all?
Sent to the Senate.
Did you?
This is legislation that includes a working group regarding Wabanaki.
Yeah.
So how would you like us to handle this? This
Can we
is,
Strip the emergency here. I'm sorry to cut you off.
oh, we can?
Yeah,
Okay,
Let's do that.
okay, so we will strip the emergency and legislative council. And then proceed with it. Okay.
So you would propose an amendment off the study table to strip the emergency and make any other changes if there were any that you wanted. We would prepare them in the name of the Senator Doosan, yes. And we would then send them up to the chamber, and just like with the appropriations table, you would take it up on the floor.
Okay, so I would propose that this be moved in with an amendment to strip the emergency enactor.
Second.
Seconded by President Daughtry. All those in favor? 6-0, motion carries. Those are all the ones. Nope.
There's one more. LD 364 should be on the last page of the most current chart. This is not a legislative study, but this is a bill that was placed before the study table pursuant to the newly amended joint rule. That bills which propose a significant revision or recodification to the statutes that require staff resources be presented to the study table.
Okay, and
there
this
are-
is transition of responsibility for
Yes.
regulating manufactured housing communities from Manufactured Housing Board to the main Office of Community Affairs. I'm generally supportive of this. I think it's important that this get done. I would like to inquire as to whether or not you feel like this is something there is capacity to accomplish. I don't know what the full scope of the statute is that would require this rewrite.
Right, so this would primarily direct the director of MOCA to work on a proposal that then the Office of Policy and Legal Analysis and the revisers of statutes would work on that recodification. It's merging two chapters of Title 10 regarding mobile home parks and manufactured housing communities and ensuring that the oversight provisions are appropriately transferred to MOCA. So that's something that we can do on our own schedule. We're not worried about legislative schedules and meetings and public notice and that sort of thing. So that's from the perspective of including it within the studies, that's not that resource intensive in terms of time, because we'll have time in our own schedules under which to do it. But it
Okay.
is a significant revision. It will take a lot of staff resources.
Okay. Motion is presumed in. All those in favor? 6-0, motion carries. And those were all the ones that are related to bills this session, right? Okay. We will now move on to the document that has items that were passed in the previous legislative session that are still on the study table, and we'll work through them in the same way. LD 169, Commission to Study Main Care Estate Recovery. Motion is presumed in. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion fails 0-6. LD 634, Commission to Study the Reduction of Unfunded and Outdated Municipal County Mandates. The motion is presumed in. All those in favor? All those opposed? Representative Gramlich, how would you like to be recorded? 0-6, the motion fails. LD 646, Commission to Study Unmanaged Stormwater Pollution. The motion is presumed in. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries 6-0. And Danielle, I think what we'll do is circle back on the ones we voted in, just see if there are any issues that we need to correct. I think that
Yeah.
might be the easiest way to do this.
With the exception of one LD, all of those on this chart will need a date change because they were carried over from the
Okay.
session.
LD 760, Commission to Study the Need to Codify or Recodify Laws Regarding Residential Community Ownership. Representative Moonen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is Senator Mark Lawrence's bill, and I'm pretty familiar with it from my time on judiciary. This is about the Common Interest Ownership Act and whether or not the state should adopt the Uniform Common Interest Ownership Act. This is dealing with condo association law, homeowners association law. Maine essentially has no homeowner association law at all. And so this is looking at how to make sure that the people who live in homeowners associations have rights that are protected and not terrorized by their homeowners associations, and that there's a fair balance there. And I have an amendment that Senator Lawrence is aware of. I have copies if anybody wants to see it, that would make some changes to the study and also ensure that there's outside funding available to pay for it. And I had the chance to run the amendment by the reviser last night, and he didn't flag any major issues with it right away, but I have copies if anybody wants it.
I would make a motion that we move this in with the proposed amendment. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Senator Peirce. All those in favor? It's unanimous, 6-0. LD 793, review, working group to review and update the laws governing harness racing. Motion is presumed in. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion fails 0-6. LD 1107, Incentive Data Task Force. Motion is presumed in. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion fails 0-6. LD 1286, Commission to Study the Impact of Blockchain Technology and Cryptocurrency on Maine's Economy and the Risk of Fraud and Theft to Maine Consumers. Motion is presumed in. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion fails 0-6. LD 1297, Committee to Study the Use of Sunflower Crops to Produce Biofuels and Other Products. The motion is presumed in. All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion fails 0-6. LD 1347, Commission to Study the Maine Tort Claims Act. Motion is presumed in. All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion fails 0-6. LD 1420, Commission to Ensure Just and Equitable Energy Transition for Maine's Workforce. The motion is presumed in. All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion fails 0-6. LD 1618, study group to research the feasibility of establishing a dedicated family court in Maine. The motion is presumed in. All those in favor? All those in favor? 1618. That's 5. All those opposed? The motion fails 5-1. LD 1640, Gagetown Harmful Chemical Study Commission. Motion is presumed in. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries 6-0. LD 1649, Commission to study the recommended solutions for modernizing and improving the effectiveness of the legislature. Motion is presumed in. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries, motion fails 0-6. LD 1696, Commission to study Maine's absolute dominion and beneficial use laws relating to water rights. Motion is presumed in. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion fails 3-3. LD 1810, Commission to study the judicial disciplinary process. Motion is presumed in. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion fails 0-6. LD 1894, Commission to study consumer grocery pricing fairness. The motion is presumed in. All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion fails 1-5. LD 1943, Commission to study the role of private equity in Maine's economy and in key economic sectors. The motion is presumed in. All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion fails 0-6. LD 1202? No, there's no, that's it?
LD 1202 has been amended in it, in its current posture, it doesn't include a study any longer.
Okay, thank you. LD 624. Commission to study a legislative internship program. That's on the list, right?
Mhm.
Yep. All those in, motion's presumed in. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion fails 0-6. LD 1449, Working Group on Modernizing State Grants, Contracts, and Procurement. Motion is presumed in. All those in favor? All those opposed? 0-6. The motion fails. Is that all of them?
There's one additional which was carried over, and it was on the study table. It's the economic impact statement pilot. It actually directs this council to study economic impact statements as part of the legislative process. It's a
Okay.
2-year study.
LD 1673, Economic Impact Statement Pilot Project. Motion's presumed in. All those in favor?
1673.
1670, LD 1673, Economic Impact Statement Pilot Project, 2-year study, requires the Legislative Council to implement an economic impact statement process, including issuing an RFP for assistance with developing the economic impact statement. This was carried over from last session.
It's on the last page of the carryover chart.
It's in a little, it's like in a little, yeah,
Thank you.
in small text at the very bottom. I'll give folks time. I'll tell you what, I'm not voting for it, so it's not going to pass. So if we want to just move on to the vote, that might be helpful. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion fails 0-6. Okay. Now we're done, right? We need to revisit any of the items we voted in for, okay, for dates? So can we take a blanket motion that the dates be updated to reflect? Well, I guess every report back is
There's only
different.
one.
Okay, only one.
1640 has already been amended, which is the Gagetown study, so the dates have already been adjusted
Okay,
with floor amendments. The other that you moved in, I believe, was LD 760. That has the amendment that Representative Moonen referred to.
okay. Did you change the dates?
So
in
that
there?
would
Amendment?
include the date change. We want to talk about the outside funding.
So in the language that you provided, it didn't specify outside funding, but if you scroll, it looks like that's what's contemplated. So I'm assuming then what you want is to provide a section in that saying that outside funding, the standard outside funding language.
Sounds great.
Is everyone who voted for the motion in favor of that? No, hearing no objection.
And do you want to say that outside funding might, that they could raise outside funding if they want? Because I don't know if it's necessary to raise outside funding.
And language that often says that outside funding is required, says that if it is not received, then the study can't meet. So you just want to, those are usually the two variations of that provision.
Representative Moonen.
While I feel confident that the money is there, I also feel very comfortable with saying outside funding is required.
Is required? Okay. Great. Everyone fine with that? Seeing no objection to that. Any other items that we moved in that need to be addressed?
I don't think so. Did you see one? Yeah, the only other amendment was the stripping the emergency of on LD 395.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got that already?
Great. That concludes our work then. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
President Daughtry moves, seconded by Senator Purse. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Appreciate your work.